What's up, guys? I'm here with Vitaly. Did I say that right? Vitaly Neimer. All
Yeah,
right.
exactly, Vitaly.
And he is a international master. He's been teaching for over 20 years. I'm excited to share with you guys one of the games that we're going to go through today. It's very interesting for several reasons. And what you're really going to take from it, hopefully, is how to keep the pressure on your opponent and not go for a quick material win, but a crushing defeat over your opponent. So, with that being said, let's start the game.
All right, thank you, Adam. It's a pleasure to being here with you.
Yeah, you too.
So, so today, oops, sorry about that. So today I have actually the topic of this game is to how to beat a grandmaster in less than 20 moves.
Wow.
So
Okay.
yeah, that usually doesn't happen every day. So anyway, so I was playing my game against the grandmaster Boris Kanzler. And my first move as white, I was playing white, and my first move as white, I played e4.
So, do you always play e4?
Yeah, actually, for the most part, most of my life, I've played e4, and when I'm starting to teach my students, usually beginners, I teach them to play e4. It is faster. It is a faster way to develop your pieces and castle.
Nice.
Because if you play d4, then it's just gonna take you longer to castle.
Okay.
So e4 and d4 is obviously the two most popular moves, and the idea is that we are following our first opening principle, which is controlling the center. And the center is the e4 square, the e5 square, d5, and d4.
Okay. And why are these squares so important in chess?
So basically, if you control the center, then you can attack in everywhere. So you can attack either in the center, you can attack on the king side, you can attack on the queen side as well. So pretty much like like either in soccer or in basketball, if you are controlling the center, then you can always maneuver your pieces at the flanks.
Awesome.
Yeah, I can. Let me just turn off my door.
All right. No worries.
Yeah. All right. Sorry about that.
No worries.
The dog is well excited about the chess game. Anyway, so yeah, so that's the importance of the center. So e4 was my first move, and now usually black continues either with e5 is a great move to start with, or maybe c5, which is called the Sicilian. But in this game, Boris played this first move, g6.
Mm-hmm.
So this is called the modern defense.
Right.
And this is kind of was a very surprise for me. Was a very big surprise for me because I was preparing for some other openings, and for some reason I had the feeling that Boris prepared against me. He had some tricks over his sleeves.
Yeah.
So the idea is obviously for black is to fianchetto their bishop to g7. And the pawn structure is not fixed yet, so he might play e5, he might play c5. We don't know that yet. So here for white, the most logical move would actually probably be d4, right? As we said, we want to control the center with e4 and d4.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, however, I had this feeling that he prepared something against me because d4 was the most obvious move. So I decided to confuse him back, and I played actually this move knight to c3.
Uh-huh.
So hopefully not falling into one of his traps. And the idea is that if he plays here c5, which is usually starts with e4 and then c5, which is called the Sicilian, and then white plays knight to c3, then we are getting into the closed Sicilian.
Right.
No, so now I played closed Sicilian most of my life. I have many games where I've beaten other grandmasters in the closed Sicilian. And so the idea for me, and this is one of the things that I try to teach my students, is that if somebody surprises you in the opening, and you don't really know the opening or how to play, try to transpose to some familiar ground, something that you do know.
Okay.
And that's pretty much what I did when I played knight to c3. So here, after playing knight to c3, Boris played this move, c6.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's still the modern defense, and it's pretty much looking at the pawn structure of a Caracan, which starts with an e4 and then c6. But just a transposition to a different pawn structure. Yeah. So again, so usually what we know from in the opening is that we would like to control the center and develop our pieces, and that's pretty much what I have done so far. I control the e with the e4 and develop my pieces. However, Boris did not felt the same way. So g6 and c6 will be slightly more passive moves.
Mm-hmm.
So here, I think that his idea with c6 was to counter my idea of the closed Sicilian, because here if I would play g3 in the closed Sicilian, now he can play d5, and he puts those pawns against my bishop, and they're gonna block my bishop, which is gonna make my bishop slightly useless.
Right.
So pretty much it's kind of in chess we have it's a very psychological game. You're trying to read the opponent and respond to it. So it's not just memorizing lines over lines, but it's trying to read, just like in poker, to read what kind of cards does he have, or what's his ideas. So that's basically what he has done. He's like, okay, so you're gonna play the closed Sicilian, so how can I prepare against that? So that's what he did. 6. So here I had to change. I had to pivot. I had to change my plan, and I went back to and played d4. So controlling the center. Boris played bishop to g2, bishop to g7, and now knight to f3. And now he played d6. So if you can see, basically, I put my pieces on the best spots. I put my knights on c3 and f3, which are in the center, and I put the pawns on e4 and d4. So I've played pretty much perfectly from an opening principles standpoint. While black, he keeps his pawns on the 6th rank, and so it is a pretty flexible form of development. However, he definitely lacks space.
Right.
So yeah. So here, instead of d6, I would suggest for him maybe playing d5 immediately. You still want to get some kind of presence in the center.
Okay.
So after d6. Go back. Here, white has a few options. So the question is, where do we put this bishop on f1? Right? Because we usually were taught that the knights and the bishops are supposed to go out first. So the question is, if I put the bishop, let's say, usually we put him on c4, looks like a great position for the bishop, attacking f7. Now, black might have this counterattack with b5, and then maybe even attacking my knight. So that's something that I did consider. But putting this bishop on e2 looked to me slightly passive, and putting the bishop on d3, again, I'm kind of stuck behind my pawn, so I don't really like this square for the bishop. So therefore, I decided not to develop this bishop on f1, but I developed this bishop on c1. So I played bishop to g5. So the idea is that now the bishop is going to be ready to attack the queen, and if black will play h6, then he creates this weakness on h6, which I can attack in the future.
Okay.
So now, okay, so Boris surprised me almost every one of the moves that he played. So now, again, the most logical way for him to play, in my opinion, was just knight f6 and castle. The finishing your development and castling. However, in the game, after bishop to g5, he played queen to b6.
Yeah, attacking that b2 square.
Exactly. So the idea behind this pawn is that if he's attacking the b2 pawn, now if I'm gonna move my b2 pawn to defend it, now this move is very, very weakening this h8 a1 diagonal. So if at some point I'm gonna lose the d4 pawn, this bishop is gonna become a really huge problem.
Right.
For white.
So how do you defend the b2 square without weakening the diagonal?
Exactly. So I have a few options. The first option I had is maybe just playing rook to b1.
Okay.
Which is an okay move, but here I actually got an idea, and the idea for that's something that I'm teaching lots of my students is that if black plays, for example, first of all, queen to b6, again, is going against the opening principles. And why is that? That's because the queen, we really don't want to develop the queen in the beginning of the game. Because the queen is the most powerful piece. It looks like it would seem logical to develop it, right? Because it's the most powerful. However, it's going to get attacked by other pieces. So that might be a huge waste of time. So what I decided to do is actually maybe to try to castle alongside. And that was my idea the whole time. So for example, if Boris would have played knight f6, the idea here, my idea was to play queen to d2. And if he castles, then now I would castle alongside.
Right.
This is something that we call this an opposite castle position. And now the biggest difference when we castle in opposite ways is that the game becomes much more risky, much more spicy. Because now basically black is going to attack on the king side with its pawns on the queen side, and then white is going to attack on the king side. So it's going to be kind of like a competition, who mates who first, rather than more positional game. So this was my original idea. So after Boris played queen to b6, I said, you know what? I'm not afraid of giving you back this pawn, and I still played queen to d2.
Interesting. And were you also able to play a move like a3 instead?
Yes, probably. But again, a3 is an interesting idea. So let's see what's the idea over here. So if the queen takes on b2, attacking this knight on c3, then the knight can actually go to a4 and trapping the queen.
Yeah, it's a neat little tactic there.
Yeah, very, very nice idea. So, however, here, if he doesn't take the pawn, well, I would assume that the grandmaster would see that tactic. He will probably continue with his plan with knight f6 and so on.
Right.
So I actually wanted him to take the pawn because this was kind of my trap. So let's see what happens. So I played queen to d2, also developing the queen. And surprisingly to me, he did take on b2 with the queen.
Okay.
So he's attacking the rook, and I played the rook to b1. And he played queen to a3. So if you look at this position, it looks like black does not have any weaknesses, but again, time is something that is very, very valuable in chess. And if you can see right now, the queen moved 1, 2, 3 times. Those 3 moves black could actually use for his piece development, which he didn't. So this one pawn on b2 actually gave me 3 moves. I developed my bishop, my queen, and my rook.
Right.
So sometimes it is good to sacrifice a pawn or even a piece to gain the advantage. So obviously in this position I had to change my plan because I cannot castle long anymore. Right? We know that the queen now is attacking and the rook moved as well. So I decided that now I just have to finish my development and castle and defend my king. So at this point, I just played bishop to c4. Now black played knight to f6. And it's important to notice here that if here black plays to pawn to b5, now I have a very strong counterattack. I can take with the bishop, pawn takes, and the knight takes on b5. So I'm attacking the queen on a3, and next move I'm preparing knight to c7.
Right, forcing the king and rook corner. That's nice.
Yeah. So, well, luckily for him, now Boris finally decided to finish his development. So he played knight to f6, and I castled.
Right, and what would happen if e5 was played? Like if you played e5 as opposed to castling?
Let's see. e5. All right, so you mean here immediately?
Yeah.
All right, good idea. So attacking his king. This is actually something that I did. It's a good idea. I did play the next move after castle. So usually what my principle says, you want to defend your king first, and then you're ready to castle, to attack. I'm sorry.
Right.
So castle first, then attack. Now e5 here again, it's a possible move. I would assume that he would take. Now I can take with the pawn, and maybe the knight would move maybe to g4. It looks like we have some threats, but now this pawn might get attacked. So my idea is that I castled first, and I wanted to see how is he going to play. I think that now if he castles, which he didn't do in the game, but I think that now I have this trick with e5. There is actually a very strong continuation here. There's rook b3 first, queen a5. He has to go back, and now I play e5. And so the idea is that now if he takes, now when the knight moves away, then the bishop can take on e7.
Ah, I see. Nice.
Okay. Yeah, so, and I see it in many games that, especially beginning chess players, all they care about is mating the king, the opponent's king. And so they start the attack maybe with 1 piece, or 2 pieces, or just with 1 queen, maybe like Boris tried to do to me. But that's really not a good idea, because what you want to do is that you want to finish your development, finish your castle, and then you're ready. You got to prepare your troops.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so let's see. So actually, after I castled, so again, castle for him was not possible. because of e5 threat, rook b3 and e5. And here, for my surprise, Boris played e5 himself.
Okay.
So why was I so much surprised? Is because usually when you are underdeveloped, which is Black's position, right? He's not developed as much. His king is in the center. Usually, you would like to keep your position closed, which means that the e file is going to remain closed, the d file is going to remain closed, because then it gives time for Black to develop his pieces. So actually, and White's idea is the opposite. I want to open up the e file and d file and start attacking his king.
So would you consider e5 to be a blunder?
I think so, yeah. Now again, it's probably very difficult here for Black to make any moves because my e5 move is coming. So I think that's why he played e5 himself. But unfortunately, I don't think it saved him. So let's see what happens. So after e5, well, now in move number 9, I took with the pawn. Obviously, my idea is to take and open up the files, and now I just took with the knight.
Right.
So you can see that probably now if his knight moves and it looks like his bishop is gonna get active, you have to remember that now I'm attacking the f7 square. So f7 becomes a weakness.
Yeah, and also mate on g8.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So now he had to castle. Okay. So in the end, pretty much the opening stage is finished, right? Because I control the center. I develop all of my minor pieces, even my rook and queen, and I castle. So now we are getting to our next stage, which is the middle game. So how do we play in the middle game? Usually, what I would suggest is try to improve your other pieces. So, for example, which piece would you improve the most? Which one would be the one that needs improvement?
I would need my last rook into the game.
Very good. So maybe it's going to be rook e1 or rook to d1, putting him on an open file. However, looking at this position, I realized that I'm so much further in development. So I developed all of my pieces. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 developed pieces, and Black only has 1, 2, and 3. So sometimes you need to have this sense that something is going on in the position. And this is where we are trying to look for tactics. So usually in every position, I tell my students always look at action moves. And action moves are 3 kinds. Checks first, then captures, and then threats.
Right.
And so here, what I saw is that still f7 is a very, very big weakness. So therefore, I decided to take here on f7.
Okay, with the knight. Now, why not? If check is super important, why not check immediately with the bishop as opposed to the knight?
Yeah, good question. So first of all, if I take with the bishop, that's the first thing I have considered as well. Probably he will take with the rook, and here, if I take with the knight, the king takes now. Every piece in chess has its own value, right? It's a point value. Now the bishops and the knights are worth 3 points. The queen is 9, the rooks are 5, and the pawns are 1. So it seems like when we gave away our knight and the bishop, we gave it for a rook and a pawn. So it seems like it's equal, right? It's 6 and 6 points. However, usually in the chess game, a knight and a bishop would be superior to a rook and a pawn. So here I still feel like white has an attack, but my idea was, let's go back. When I took with the knight first, and he has to take with the rook, now I can take his rook, but I can also wait, because now we have a position which we call a pin. So the bishop is actually pinning the rook. The rook cannot move anywhere because he is protecting the king. So usually, how does it help us? The idea is that now, instead of taking the pinned piece on f7, what we would like to do is to increase the pressure on the pinned piece. So maybe if I could somehow miraculously bring this knight to e5 and add an attack on the f7 rook, it would be even stronger. In that case, I would take the rook for free.
Right.
Instead of giving up my bishop. So that's actually why I took with the knight first. So that's how the game went. So I took with the knight. Rook takes on f7. And now I played e5. So again, trying to open up all those files.
Yeah, I love that. Not taking the rook right away, because usually, you want to get that material back, right? You're down a knight for a pawn, but what you're doing is you're keeping the pressure, and you're continuing the attack, and you're not worried about the material equality at this point, because you recognize that the black king is vulnerable, and you want to checkmate. You're not focused on getting a drawn endgame or getting some type of imbalance. You want to checkmate this grandmaster.
Right. I wanna finish quickly and go home. Okay, so here I'm attacking his knight, and again the knight had many options where to go. Boris decided to put the knight on d5 because his line of process was that if you are being attacked, you want to exchange as many pieces as possible. Okay, so for example, if we get out the knights and we get out the bishops off the board, the rooks and the queens, all we're going to get left with is that black is with a piece up, right? Black is a knight, gonna get a knight versus a pawn.
Right.
So that's why he wanted to exchange. He also wanted to block my pin. Okay. So now we already know that we have to get rid of this knight on d5. It's a very annoying knight. So who do you think that I took the knight with? My bishop, my knight, or my queen?
Absolutely the knight, because you want to keep that pin.
Exactly, yeah. So the knight takes on d5, pawn takes, and now here I can take with the bishop, and again get back to this pinning him. But I can also take with my queen, and again I'm going to put even more pressure on his rook on f7. And I'm developing my queen, activating more my queen. Okay. All right. So queen takes on d5, and now he has to defend the rook. The only way he could do that is by playing queen to f8. So here, again, I just like to stop for a moment sometimes, and just illustrate, showing that yes, I am a knight down. But am I really a knight down? If you look at this, all my pieces are working, except this rook on f1, which is defending the king. And so this rook is actually pinned. This queen has to defend the rook. The bishop is slightly doing something, but all those pieces are underdeveloped. Really, he's playing without this rook. He's actually playing without this knight, without this bishop so much. So actually, I'm not a knight down, but I am, much more than that. I actually have the advantage.
Nice.
So after queen f8, I was looking on a way on how to increase my pressure over the rook, and I found out that the e pawn is going to become very, very dangerous, and therefore I pushed pawn to e6. Now the idea is that obviously I wanted to take the rook, but let's say the rook goes somewhere. Rook goes to c7. Now white has a very strong move. If you can see that the bishop and the queen are lined up just in front of the king. So now we have a theme that we call a discovered check. Now if you play rook to c7, I can actually move my pawn to e7, and usually the piece that we are moving, that's the piece that we usually check with. However, in this position, it's not going to be the pawn who is checking the king, it's actually going to be the queen. So this is what we call a discovered check in chess.
Nice, it's very powerful, and that wins the game on the spot.
Yeah. So yeah, because it's check, and he has to move the king, and then we move we take the queen.
Right.
So therefore, Boris had to blockade this pawn. So after e6, he played rook to e7. Now here I just snap this rook of the board because my bishop has finished his duty on g5. So the bishop took on e7. The queen took on e7. And really, now I have, let's see, so the pawns, I have 2 pawns, I have a rook and 2 pawns for a knight and a bishop, so I still have the advantage. And again, I can still develop this rook to e1 and d1, which would be good moves. But here, in this position, I actually have a powerful move which finished the game.
Alright, so guys, stop for a second, take a look at the position, and try to find the winning move. We'll give you 5 seconds, see if you can find it. Alright, so what's the move?
Alright, hopefully you guys found the move. And again, in chess, we have a process of thinking. Now, the process of thinking, again, we wanted to look at action moves. And every position, you want to check those action moves. Again, the first one is going to be a check. The second one are going to be captures. And the third one are going to be threats. So, for example, we have a check in this position. We have queen to d8. We also have a captures. Queen takes on b7. Rook takes on b7. And now we're going to look for threats. So there are many threats in this position. There is queen c5, queen d6, and so on and so on. But usually you just want to go in accordance to your list. So first of all, let's look at the check move. And that is going to save you time. So let's look at this move, queen to d8 check. Now, at first sight, it does not really make any sense, right? Because we are giving up our queen for nothing, right? But there is one but. We always want to look just 1 or 2 moves further. And here we have to ask ourselves, what has changed in the position? So what has changed here? And what has changed here is that the queen, which was on e7, she's now on d8. So what does it mean that the queen now is on d8? It means that now, let's ask ourselves, what was the queen doing on e7?
It was blockading that pawn.
Exactly, it was blocking the pawn on e6. So let's look at this. Now the pawn can actually move. Again, looking at those action moves. e7. And now, again, we have a position of a discovered check. And if the king moves to h8, we're obviously going to snap his queen over the board, making another check. And if the bishop goes to f8, then the queen takes, and it's a checkmate.
Yeah, I really like how you were able to maintain that initiative and not go for that quick material gain. So queen d8 a fantastic move there. Let's go back. Let's take a look at
Yeah, so after Queen D8, Grandmaster Boris Cancel, he resigned, obviously. Uh, but there are a few points I wanted to make sure that every our audience understands and learns from it, and those are three things. So the first one is that when you are playing against somebody who is stronger than you, like a Grandmaster, International Master, FIDE Master, and he surprises you in the opening. That's going to happen. That's going to happen a lot in chess, in your chess career, because you can't really know all the variations and openings. Um, so first of all, take a deep breath and look for ways to get into a familiar position, something that you know. Then number two, also very important, move according to the opening principles. And this is control the center, develop your pieces, and the last one, defend your king and castle. Uh, and the third one, the third principle I wanted you to learn from this game is that follow the guidelines. So, for example, don't develop your queen in the opening, don't expose your king early, and also be aware of those poison pawns, such as b2. It clearly shows that black had wasted a lot of time on moving his queen, taking this one pawn, but eventually this pawn wasn't even significant for the game.
right.
So that's how you beat a grandmaster in 20 moves.
Yeah.
In less 20 moves.
Awesome game. I wanted to ask you some questions for the viewers to give people some insight into other chess masters around the world. So I do have some questions to ask you. Thank you very much for the interview. I learned a lot from it personally because usually I want to gain back my material right away. I want to do a little tactic and gain back my material, so it makes me think more about how can I keep pressure on my opponent. Okay, questions. First of all, how did you get started playing chess? Was there a family member that introduced the game to you? How did you get started?
Yeah, great question. So I actually started to play chess when I was about 5 years old, back in Russia. I was born in Russia. And I guess that I was born in a beautiful city which is called St. Petersburg, and chess was recognized as one of the top sports or hobbies in Russia, in that city. I guess nobody in my family really played chess, but as a kid, I was very hyperactive. So I feel like maybe my mom was too tired of me, so she just gave me to the coach and said, just deal with him.
Right.
I just tried to make him to sit in one spot for a few seconds. And what's funny, I mean, it worked. And then my mom was learning chess together with me. So she was present at those lessons, so we were kind of learning together.
Nice. Okay, awesome. Second question. When becoming an international master, did you have specific training methods? Like, what were your top methods for training, and what are your top methods for training now?
Yeah, so I think that for every beginning chess player, there are three things that you need for success. Number one is going to be a chess coach. Number two, lots of practice. And number three, rigorous studying. Now, throughout my career, I had probably more than 20 coaches, different levels, different titles. Some of them were good, some of them were not so much. Now, I do believe that those coaches who gave me the most, they taught me chess the right way. And this is what the Russian chess school is kind of following. No sideline openings or maybe cheap tricks in the beginning. Also, I think that the most effective coaches, they showed me on how to work and improve on my own. Um, so that's pretty much what I also do nowadays, and that's how I coach myself as well, and I train on my own.
So they,
Uh,
they, they would give you mainline openings to study.
exactly, yes. And if you look at the top grandmasters in the world, maybe top 50, top 10, Magnus Carlsen, the world champion, you will see that they mostly start, you have to at least start with main lines. Um, yeah, because again, you want the main lines, you follow those principles which we just discussed today. Now, the second one was practicing, and practicing nowadays it can be done either in live tournaments or in online tournaments. Um, and so today there are so many young, strong chess players just because they are playing so much online chess. Now, in our ages, 20 or 10 years ago, this was actually not possible. So sometime today you can even play about 20 games a day, maybe even more, which means about more than 500 games per month. But for our generation, this wasn't really available when we were young, so we had to rely on live tournaments only. And in that case, you were only limited maybe to 20 games per month, which is pretty much what you can get per day today. Um, and the last one was studying, obviously with your coach. You need to solve puzzles, read books, analyze openings with your coaches and by yourself as well.
And did you take a lot of time reviewing your own games, looking for ways you can improve your play?
Yes, always. I always recommend to after finishing a tournament, we have those score sheets which we notate our games on. So always go. The first thing I do is I always put it in. I always save them in a digital format on my computer because paper copies they get lost. Um, so saving them and then analyzing them. First of all, I would suggest try to analyze them on your own. Try to find your own mistakes, and then with that come to your coach and show him and see where could you even make better moves next time.
Right. Do you ever use an engine to assist you with that?
Yes, definitely. I mean, computers are a big part of the chess game nowadays. It's pretty much almost like a chess coach, which he cannot talk, but he can definitely suggest you the best move in the position.
Awesome. Okay, next question. How important or relevant is opening knowledge today versus sometime like 50 or 60 years ago?
Yeah, opening preparation changed a lot in the past 10 to 20 years, especially because of the rise of computers. We were able to discover new lines and perfect our games. And every day novelties are introduced, and it's very important to stay updated. Otherwise, you might be caught up in a home preparation and lose the game. So 50 years ago, openings were based mostly on intuition and character. So you were able to play more freely without being punished. However, today, even the beginning players know theory until moves number 10 or 15. And so it makes much more difficult to get advantage even against beginning chess players.
Awesome. Okay. Two more questions, and one is, what is your favorite chess book, or what are some of your favorite chess books, and why?
So I have a few chess books. The first one that I remember is My System by Aaron Nimzovich. It's really a great book which explains the basic positional concepts. The second one, pretty much all the books by Artur Yusupov and Mark Dvoretsky.
Okay.
They follow the Russian chess school. The number of series, the number of concepts. I think it's called the School of Future World Champions or School of Chess Excellence. So I think that Dvoretsky was one of the great chess coaches of all times, and his insights are really invaluable. Um, and obviously, endgame manuals, also by Dvoretsky, and tactical books as well. I remember that I used to solve books over books, and I had those notebooks that where I used to write my solutions. Now nowadays, you can actually do most of the tactical practice online. You have lots of websites, lots of softwares, where you can just solve them.
But
Save some
I'm gonna
trace.
put those links in the description if people want to purchase those books or find
Okay.
more information of them. Okay. Last question. Um, what is pattern recognition in chess, and can pattern recognition kind of extend beyond a certain tactical motif? Because we know, what a pin is, we know what a skewer is, we know what castling is. So is there some sort of pattern recognition that doesn't correspond to any tactical idea?
Yeah, I think that there is a lot of pattern recognition. First of all, pattern recognition is the concept of virtually remembering maybe chess positions or techniques or any other kind of situation, even in your lifetime. So basically, just like a photographic memory in chess, we can memorize and learn those patterns. Now, in most cases, we look for pawn structures. So, for example, if you put a pawn structure on the board without any pieces, an advanced chess player can probably even tell you what opening it was played in. So maybe it was a closed opening, like the French, or maybe a bit more of an open opening, like the Scotch. So definitely, I think that pattern recognition can be extended to other areas beyond chess and tactics. Um, placing the pieces or the endgame techniques such as mating, maybe with a king and a knight and a bishop. We always know that we wanted to get the king in the center, but there is a very theoretical position where you put the king, and then there's the knight,
Right.
bishop, king, and bishop. So yeah, it helps a lot, and not only in chess, also in everyday life.
So are you able to have specific plans and strategies based on any chess position?
Yes, yes, I mean definitely. Now again, you have to. Every position is different, so there are some strategies, there are some principles, just as we saw today. And the the first stage is going to be the opening, which we said that you wanted to develop your pieces, control the center, and defend your king. Now after that, when you get into the middle game, again, you want to ask yourself: are there any tactical maneuvers? Are there any checks or captures? Any pins or forks? If there are none, then maybe try to ask yourself: well, what is my worst piece? How can I still improve my other pieces? And then when you go to an end game, again, you're gonna ask yourself the same questions, but then you also maybe want to consider and even improving your king.
Right. Awesome. All right. Last thing is if people want coaching from you, do you offer coaching services, and how can people find you?
Yes, I do offer coaching. I offer both in-person coaching. I travel. I live in St. Louis, Missouri, if anybody wants to find me. And then I have a great website. It's called powerfulchess.com. All the information is there about me. And I hope to, I invite everybody to contact me.
Right. Awesome. All right. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the show, and I'm looking forward to interviewing more top level chess players. All right. Thank you, Vitaly. Have an awesome
Thank you,
day.
Adam. Thank you. Me too. Good luck.
Good luck.